Good evening. Thank you for tuning in to Face to Face. I'm your host, Dennis Ward. Our guest this week is the Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. Arlen Dumas was born and raised in Puckatawagan, Manitoba. In 2008, while in his mid-30s, he was, like his grandfather before him, elected Chief of Mathias, Colomb, Cree Nation. In July 2017, he was elected as the Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. Grand Chief Dumas, thanks so much for taking the time to join us here today.
Good day. Thank you for having me.
One of the major issues impacting First Nations people in northern Manitoba right now is the closure of the rail line into Churchill. Wondering if you could speak about the importance of that line and what the closure has meant.
Well, it's something that I've been focused on, on a personal level in my previous capacity as chief. I believe that it's very important that the northern people retain those assets. You know what I mean? We developed a process where we could have a First Nations consortium, negotiate with the current owners at the moment to acquire those assets. It should be up to us in the north to decide when we choose to eat and when we choose to travel. And I think that's the wave of the future.
What has been the impact on the people that have relied on that line?
Well, presently, I really sympathize for the people of the north at the moment. People tend to lose sight of the fact that, our incomes up north are very, very fixed, and that at the moment, because of the lack of transportation, people are paying ridiculous prices for food, for travel and whatnot. And the quicker we can resolve that issue, the better it is for everyone.
You were recently critical of a plan by the federal government who's given a 30-day deadline, which I guess would be approaching soon, for Omnitrax to either start repairing the line or face a lawsuit. What are your concerns with the government's move there?
I think it wasn't well planned. I believe that the whole purpose of what it was we were wanting to do, ensuring that we did proper due diligence. I've said publicly that we would make sound business decisions, that we would negotiate the best possible solution for ourselves in the north. And in doing so, we have to play all of those things out. And it's almost as if the government has disregarded these good efforts, and by threatening litigation, all it's going to do is tie things up. It's going to get people back on their heels, and they're going to enter into a long, drawn-out process, which is essentially going to negate all of the good things that we've done. If that was the goal, then perhaps that litigious process should have started a year ago, and we wouldn't have had to expend the resources and the time that we had done.
You spoke about the consortium. Can you tell us who's involved and what the plan there is?
The consortium is open to all of the 32 MKO communities in the north. We have a partnership with all of those people. We've developed a unique model that we had brought forward. We're also, engaging the municipalities and everybody in the north. And I said this from day one, it needs to be a truly northern railway for the people of the north.
What do you see as some of the benefits of, those communities in the north taking control over this line in that port?
Well, again, I'd have to go back to my own community's experience. We have to appreciate things from our own perspective. The Mathias Colomb Cree Nation operates one of the premier airlines in the province. We operate premier air ambulance service. We're in partnership with two other communities running our own railway with Q8 and railway services. And those things actually bring forward pride and a unique opportunity for our own people. There's that aspect of it, but also just the functional aspect of having First Nations have ownership of those assets and playing a meaningful role in how the North develops over the next 100 years.
Winter is most certainly setting in here, and as you mentioned, prices are getting high. Are there additional concerns that come with winter and that line still being down?
Absolutely. We have an idea as to what the cost is, today. We had an idea as to what the cost would be, a couple of months ago, but because we were unable to move forward in a meaningful way, next spring when the land starts to thaw and there's additional damage done and erosion done to the rail line, those costs and everything are going to be exponentially greater. So it actually does a disservice for everybody involved.
What do you see? How do you see this playing out over the winter months here?
I would hope that we would be able to finalize the transaction. I would hope that our partners, the provincial and federal government, would come on board and help us deal with the issue. We need to have people with the proper philosophy and the proper mindset to move this issue forward, and we would hope that the feds and the province would champion that idea, as they were part of at the beginning, at the onset of this project. They were very much wanting us to move in this direction. Unfortunately, we had 2 changes of government that kind of delayed things.
One of the other big issues that AMC has recently taken on is when it comes to a recently launched nearly $1 billion lawsuit against the Manitoba government. Why has the AMC brought that forward?
I think that, and I'm going to say that we've sort of done this on behalf of not only ourselves, but on behalf of Manitoba. I believe that, this issue is an innovative thing and that there's opportunity there. I've been approached by business people randomly who have actually acknowledged and appreciated the stance that the Assembly has taken. These are people who run hotels, who run different establishments here in the city, who say that perhaps it's time to sort of shake up this issue on behalf of everyone. I believe that this is a very important issue on different levels for First Nations people. There was an agreement that we would approach this issue collaboratively, and unfortunately the previous government was negligent on different levels. And unfortunately, this new government has to inherit, those difficulties. But we must push forward and come up with a solution that's going to be beneficial for everyone.
Is the plan here to see a First Nations-owned casino in the city?
Potentially, why not? I think that we need to have a proper review and move forward in a collaborative way. I believe that the province, makes very significant revenue, and I think there's an opportunity there for us to expand upon that role. But it's also we also have to look at the other aspects of the negative side of gambling as well, and we need to figure out how we curb the abuse of that and make it keep it an enjoyable thing and not a punitive thing.
Grand Chief, we're going to have to take a quick break here, and then we'll be right back to continue our conversation with the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, Grand Chief Arlen Dumas, here on Face to Face. Welcome back to Face to Face. Our guest this week is the Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, Arlen Dumas. Grand Chief, again, thanks for joining us. You recently completed your first 100 days in office. What sticks out for you so far in your new role?
What sticks out the most for me in regards to my first 100 days is the amount of support that I'm getting. I wanted to acknowledge the Chiefs who have given me this opportunity to be the Grand Chief at this time. I find that I have a very approachable relationship with all governments, provincial and federal. I think that it is quite a unique time in Manitoba, and I'm going to hold this opportunity close, and I want to ensure that I use the auspices of my office in the best possible way and advocate and help the people as best I can.
You spent nearly a decade in your role as chief in Mathias, Colomb. Why was this a role you wanted to step into? I'm very grateful for my community and my people and for the opportunity that they had given me. They had shown me insight.
Being a chief is a very difficult job, you know, but mind you, we know that when we go in, there's a lot of expectation, there's a lot of need for us to advocate for our people. I had a goal in my mind, you know, when I became chief, and my initial campaign promise was to get my community out of intervention, to get my community out of co-management. And upon doing so, that allowed for us to make certain advantages in my community. And that I felt that on a personal level, I had achieved a lot of my goals that I wanted to achieve in my community. And then I sort of got a calling to do greater things on a personal level, you know, and I wanted to assist, you know, our people in the province to achieve greater things.
You mentioned, you know, co-management, third-party management, a lot of communities under the thumb of that. How did you manage to get to your community out of co-management?
We had significant plans, you know, the will of the people were it was something that they wanted to achieve. I believe that this whole intervention policy is actually a mockery and a misrepresentation of the reality of our communities. There seems to have been this false narrative that, you know, we're not frugal with our funds and that we don't use them, even though we're audited through the teeth, even though every penny that comes into our communities is accounted for. There's this narrative that seems to exist when really the true issue is chronic underfunding, and the more that we were able to actually show and examples of that, you know, the greater gains we were able to make. I believe that the majority of communities in the province who are in intervention are being punished for some reason, and I will ensure that we advocate on their behalf and get them all out of it.
You know, a lot of people think maybe a First Nations ran similar to a city when it's more like, or a town when it's more like you're running a municipal, provincial, and federal government all at the same time. Can you speak about the difficulties as someone who was a chief for nearly a decade in operating?
Absolutely, that's a good question. See, and you're absolutely right. You know, chiefs are more like premiers. Chiefs have the amount of responsibility that we have. Like, at the end of the day, I'm accountable for our health needs. I'm accountable for our education needs, our social program needs, all the things that are impacting our community. The Chief and Council has a responsibility to ensure that those programs and services are run. You know, I'm sure if, you know, in different capacities, if I was a mayor, you know, I'd look after public works, and I'm not sure what else a mayor does, but, you know, it is quite a difference in responsibility. And in many cases, our communities are actually not aware of the actual amount of responsibility their leaders have. You know, and that's internally. Externally, you know, chiefs also are responsible for the larger issues in regards to advocating on all of those programs, you know, on additional housing, on all of these issues, and also on looking out for our rights, you know, our treaty rights, our inherent rights, and that chiefs also have a responsibility and an obligation to do that, as well as different forms of advocacy. You know, I was fortunate to be one of the chiefs who had actually gone out to Ottawa a few years back to assist Chief Spence and Elder Robinson and, you know, I believe there's a SOC from the East Coast who were doing the hunger strike. Like, we had an obligation and a responsibility to ensure that those individuals were heard by the Prime Minister of the day, you know, and it's those types of things that chiefs have an obligation and a responsibility to do, but unfortunately our communities, and I guess the rest of Canada, don't have an appreciation of the significance of those responsibilities.
What type of advocacy will you be taking on to see some of these changes that you'd like to see?
I want to bring forward meaningful opportunities to ensure that people appreciate and remember the importance of our treaties, of our inherent rights. You know, I want to ensure that there's proper advocacy on all of those aspects in regards to our lands. You know, that we have to have a meaningful relationship in order to on how we manage our resources. I want to make sure that I'm able to assist the chiefs in their own advocacy as well in regards to issues when they're having to deal with very highly technical issues in regards to, you know, duty to consult or what have you. I believe that the Assembly is an implement that we need to be available to assist and facilitate our chiefs when they need it. And in turn, that helps the community.
One of the big issues here that we've done many stories on, and you're well aware of, is that of Child and Family Services, and this province has one of the highest apprehension rates in the world, really.
Yep.
The AMC's Family Advocate recently received some funding to look into this. How critical has that role been for this province and for the people?
It's been extremely critical, and I guess that's sort of an example as to when we're participating in a meaningful way and we come up with our own solutions, then tangible deliverables are found. You know, our advocate at the moment, with the collaboration of the chiefs and our Elders Council and our Women's Council, are doing very transformative things and bringing forward some very transformative solutions, and that this issue is going to actually become very significant in the very near future. I believe that we're going to be doing some groundbreaking work on this initiative. We have 11,000 children in care. You know, the current and again, this is an issue that the current government has to inherit. But regardless, they will be held accountable. But if you take a look at the commodities that our children have been made to be over the last 15 years, it's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment that we have so many children, that people have built an industry on behalf of our children, you know, and it's truly looking to be more and more like a second generation of residential school. And in order to change that, we will have to bring forward the tangible solutions to do that, and we're prepared to do it. You know, we're going to do it.
We've previously had the children's advocate, Cora Morgan, on, and you know, when this current government was in opposition, they were an ally to Cora and to AMC. And have you seen in your 100 days, I guess, a change in this government's attitude to help reverse this trend of the high apprehension rates here?
Yeah, I don't know if I could say that much. I wouldn't go that far. I believe that this current government is at least listening. However, they need to start doing more meaningful things. They need to allow for our meaningful participation. You know, this current government says that they want to amend the legislation for CFS in the province. They want to do changes in policy, but as long as they're doing it, it's just a repetition of the colonial mindset that we've been enduring for the last 100 years. If they truly want to make changes, well, they need to let us draft the legislation. We need to do it collaboratively so that we can look out for our children, because people keep forgetting that, you know, we keep isolating ourselves and saying, oh, well, they're First Nations children. They're all our children. We're all Manitobans. So if you want to have meaningful change, you need to let us be engaged and allow us to help look out for ourselves. And initially, at the beginning of this whole issue, that was actually the goal. It was the goal of this province to work with us in a meaningful way.
Grand Chief, we've got to take another short break here, and then we'll be back with Face to Face and Grand Chief of the AMC, Arlen Dumas, to continue our conversation here on Face to Face.
Awesome.
Welcome back to Face to Face. Our guest this week is the Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, Arlen Dumas. Grand Chief, thanks again for joining us. Your predecessor, longtime Grand Chief Derek Niepenak, said that he had hoped to change things from the inside while he was with AMC, but believed in the end rebuilding nations, creating positive change would have to be done by working outside of the confines of the Indian Act. Is that something that you struggle with yourself?
No. I have a conviction as to who I am and what I know. You know, I believe that, you know, I feel bad for my predecessor because he had entered into at a time that was most dire. A lot of people are unaware that the previous government actually made their best efforts to decimate our political organizations. They made their best efforts to discredit them. The Assembly itself, you know, who actually grew from the grassroots, you know, by the leadership of the 60s and 70s, was the premier political organization, and the previous government truly tried to kill this organization. And unfortunately, my friend, former Grand Chief Derek Meepanak, had to endure that. And unfortunately, he had to do a lot of it in silence, because nobody wants to hear the excuses, but that was the reality of his situation. However, for me, I'm fortunate to be the Grand Chief at this time. I believe that I'm going to bring forward change, and I'm going to give the political establishment an opportunity to honor the flowery words and the great things that they say. And the moment that they don't honor those words, I'm going to let everybody know, and we'll adjust at that time in the way that we need to adjust.
There were a lot of cuts to funding and discrediting of organizations. Is that going to be difficult to come back from that now?
No, because at the time, I have quite a loud podium. I think that people are wanting to move forward in a meaningful way. People are wanting to figure out less abrasive ways to push things forward. I seem to have an audience with whomever I want to meet with, and I'm fortunate and I'm grateful for that. I attribute that to the support that the Chiefs have given me. I was a chief for 10 years, as you'd said, but never before have I had the access that I have today, and I hold that very closely, and I'm going to use that to the best possible way, and I'm going to advocate on behalf of my Chiefs, but also the grassroots people who support us to do the work that we're doing.
You mentioned the difficulties under the previous government and the flowery language of this current liberal government. Do you see a big change in the way the two operate, as somebody who's been in the game for a while?
Yeah, I do. Mind you, a lot of the successes that we had made in my community were during the previous government. We were able to do very, very substantive and significant things. However, the difference is at that time, as you'd said earlier, we got out of intervention. We were out of that false narrative that was imposed upon a lot of people. Therefore, one of my main goals is to help the rest of the communities in Manitoba get out of intervention, because unless they do that, they won't be able to meaningfully participate in a lot of this flowery language that the current government is saying. These investments and all these resources that are being made available. If we're under intervention, we're not going to be able to access any of that.
Grand Chief, thanks again so much for joining us. Congrats on your first 100
Awesome.
days, and best of luck in the years ahead. That is all the time we have for today. We're always looking for new guests, so if you have any suggestions, please email us at news@aptn.ca. And a reminder, Face to Face is now also available as a podcast. You can find this episode and past episodes at aptnnews.ca/face-to-face podcast. Thank you for tuning in to Face to Face. I'm Dennis Ward. We'll see you next time.